Let's go to the Deputy Vice-Chancellor from Melbourne University, Michael Wesley now. Professor Wesley, thanks as always. This Macron-Trump row, I guess it doesn't really come as a surprise. They don't have much of a similar worldview really on anything.
No, absolutely not. And how could anyone except President Trump, criticise NATO? I think Macron is particularly annoyed, or was particularly annoyed, that America is making strategy in Syria without telling any of its NATO allies who have obvious interests in what happens in that part of the world. They're very disturbed by the fact that Erdogan in Turkey is basically saying he'll block any moves for NATO to support the Baltic states if Russia is aggressive towards them, if they don't back Turkey on Syria. And essentially what Trump has done is backed down and backed Turkey on that. The NATO allies are very annoyed about that.
Trump's never been a big fan of NATO. He's been quite vocal about the fact he wants America first and to play down these multilateral organisations. Do you think we're likely to see more antagonism towards NATO in the lead up to the election next year? We're
already seeing it. I mean, he's basically told Macron not to criticise NATO, but then gone out and criticised Germany over not spending enough on its own defence. So I think it's almost guaranteed that as Trump starts to campaign for office, the attacks on NATO, the attacks on some other allies, we've seen in the past he's willing to have a go at the Japanese, have a go at the Koreans. I think that's almost inevitable.
And one of the core elements of NATO is that the US and others respond if one of the members is attacked. President Trump was asked, what if a nation that was delinquent in spending on defence was targeted? And he says, he was asked, would the US defend? Would they respond in defence of that particular member of NATO? And the quote was, it's a very interesting question, isn't it? He kept it very open.
Article 5 of the NATO treaty says an attack on one is an attack on all. And so you are treaty bound to go and help that member. What we're seeing is a really, really worrying unravelling of NATO. What Macron has done is to say, because we cannot depend on the United States, we need a European solution to some of these defence issues, and that gets up Trump's nose as well. So, I mean, there will be more tension, and I think NATO will be damaged over this.
One thing getting up Trump's nose at the moment is the impeachment inquiry. The findings really about as bad as we would have expected.
Yeah, I mean, it's using the transcript of the phone call itself. Just if you read through that transcript, it's fairly damning. The fact that you could threaten to withhold military assistance unless another country provides you with electoral aid, if you like, and provides you with dirt on a possible opponent. That's pretty bad, but is it bad enough to get an impeachment vote across the line? I'm very doubtful about that. We're seeing a Congress that is very divided in partisan terms. What we're starting to see in statements that are being made by Republicans and Democrats is that people are lining up behind partisan positions, and that's not going to get an impeachment vote across the line.
It's hard to see one as well, Michael, just finally on this, when we're only weeks away from the 2020 presidential season. Annalise is going to be in Iowa early next year for the Iowa caucuses, so we know we're literally, that's less than 2 months away.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's going to be a massive year in presidential calendar terms. How on earth do the Republicans shift given this time of the electoral cycle? I just don't see it.
I think some of the more hard-headed of them will be hoping that this impeachment process actually increases the turnout of their base. What we saw against Bill Clinton, for example, when he faced impeachment back in the 1990s, the Democrat vote went up. So this could very well backfire on the Democrats, and I think we're starting to see some of the more hard-headed Republicans say, bring it on. Let's use this, and let's really use it to mobilise the base.
Professor Wesley, thanks so much for your time. We'll catch you soon. It's great to get your insights as